Algebra 2, Set 105, Advanced Factoring. Okay, so when we have a polynomial and we multiply it out, a polynomial that looks like this is going to multiply out to be x cubed plus 5x squared plus 6x. So when we talk about this polynomial, x plus 3, and x plus 2 are factors of x cubed plus 5x squared plus 6x. So far when we factor, we've factored expressions that look something like this, where we have ax squared plus bx plus c, but a has always been 1. Makes it pretty easy to factor. So now we're going to start looking at expressions that have different values for a. So, for example, if the factored version looked like this, 3x plus 2 times 2x minus 3, then we would end up with 6x squared plus 4x minus 9x minus 6, or in other words, 6x squared minus 5x minus 6. And when we look at a is a 6 instead of a 1. So the factors are 3x plus 2 and 2x minus 3, and they are factors of 6x squared minus 5x minus 6. Okay, so let's take a closer look at 6x squared. When we look at 6x squared, we can see that it's a product of the first terms of the two factors. So the first terms are 3x and 2x. So the first part is the first terms. The last part, negative 6, is a product of the last term. So our last terms being 2 and negative 3. 2 times negative 3 gives me negative 6. Now, how do we get negative 5? In order to get negative 5, we have to take the sum of the first and the last of the last. So the first term of the first equation and the last term of the last equation we're going to multiply together. We can also call it the outsides. And the sum of the second of the first and the first of the last, also known as the two middles or the insides. The two outside parts are called extremes, and the two middle parts are called means. It's a little bit confusing, so we'll make it a little bit easier. So the product of the means, when we look at those means, is 2 times 2x, so we get 4x, and the product of the extremes is 3x times negative 3, where you get negative 9x. Negative 9x plus 4x is negative 5x. Okay, so if you had a problem like this, ax plus b times cx plus d, and we're going to multiply it all out, it's going to look like a times c x squared plus bcx plus axd plus bd. So the first and the last are pretty easy. You can see that we have multiplied a times b times c times d. When we look at the middle terms, the constants are products of pairs of a, b, c, and d. So here's what you do when you're going to factor a trinomial. First of all, you're going to multiply the coefficients of the first term by the last term. Secondly, you're going to find two factors of this product whose sum is the coefficient of the middle term. And then finally, you're going to factor the resultant expression. Okay, so for example, we're going to factor this problem. Factor 6x squared plus x minus 2. So we're going to take the first and the last term. We're going to look at the coefficients. So a coefficient is 6 and negative 2, and we're going to multiply those. So when you get 6 times negative 2, that equals negative 12. So now we're going to look at the factors of negative 12, and we're going to look at their sums. Now we're looking for a sum that is going to be a positive 1 because that's what our middle term is. So we have 12 times negative 1. When we add, so 12 times negative 1 equals negative 12. But when we add those together, we get 11. 12 plus negative 1 is 11. Okay, so that doesn't work. 6 times negative 2 is also a factor of negative 12. 6 times negative 2, but 6 plus negative 2 gives us 4, and we're looking for a 1. Then our next factor is going to be 4 times negative 3. 4 times negative 3 gives me negative 12, and 4 plus negative 3 does give me 1, which is what I'm looking for. So here's what I do. 6x squared plus x minus 2. I'm going to rewrite it as 6x squared, and then I'm going to take these two numbers. I'm going to take 4 and put it in front of x, and then I'm going to take negative 3 and put it in front of x, and then I'm going to put minus 2. Now, I need to factor what I have in front of me. So, when I look at 6x squared and 4x, I can pull a 2x out. So 2x pulled out of 6x squared gives me 3x. 2x pulled out of 4x gives me a 2. Now I look at the second 2, negative 3x minus 2, and the only thing I can pull out of that is a negative 1. So negative 1 gives me 3x plus 2. What you have inside the parentheses should match at this point. We have a 3x plus 2 and a 3x plus 2 inside the parentheses. So when we factor this out, we end up with 2x minus 1 times 3x plus 2. And that is the final factored piece. So let's do another example because it's kind of tricky. Factor 2x squared minus 7x minus 15. So we're going to take the first and the last coefficient. 2 times negative 15 gives us negative 30. And now we're going to factor negative 30. So the factors of negative 30 are negative 30 and 1. When we add those, we get negative 29. And again, we're looking for negative 7. So that doesn't work. Negative 15 times 2 gives us negative 13. The next factor is going to be negative 10 and 3. Negative 10 plus 3 gives me negative 7, which is what we want. So we're going to write it out. 2x squared minus 10x plus 3x minus 15. And then we're going to take the first two and factor what we can. So we get 2x pulled out and x minus 5 in parentheses. And then out of the second part, we can pull a 3 out. So plus 3 times x minus 5. Notice that I have x minus 5 in the parentheses, so the factored expression is going to be 2x plus 3 times x minus 5. One more example. Factor to find the solution of this equation. Negative 5x minus 6 equals negative 6x squared. So first thing we need to do is set this equal to 0, and we're going to write it in descending order. 6x squared minus 5x minus 6 equals 0. We're going to take the first and the last term, and look at the coefficients. So we have 6 times negative 6 gives us negative 36. And then we're going to look for factors of negative 36 that add to negative 5. So negative 36 times 1 doesn't work. Negative 18 times 2 also doesn't work. Negative 12 times 3 doesn't work. But negative 9 times 4 does work. Negative 9 plus 4 is negative 5. So I can rewrite 6x squared minus 9x plus 4x minus 6 equals 0. And so when I factor this out, 3x times 2x minus 3, because when you pull out a 3x, you get 2x minus 3. Sorry, when you pull out 3x from 6x squared, you get 2x, and when you pull out 3x from negative 9x, you get negative 3. Then we look at our last two pieces. We can pull out a 2. So we're going to put plus 2, and then 4x divided by 2 is 2x, and negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. So we get 3x plus 2 times 2x minus 3. That is equal to 0. Now, in the previous problems, we were just dealing with expressions. We weren't dealing with equations, so we would be done at this point. But for this part, we have to solve it. We have to figure out what makes the first one equal to 0, what makes the second one equal to 0. So 3x plus 2 equals 0. X would have to be negative 2/3. And then the second part, 2x minus 3 equals 0. X would have to be 3/2. So our solution is x equals negative 2/3 and x equals 3/2.